Jakey Lee, once one of rock's most prominent guitarists in the 80s, was out of the spotlight for 15 years of his career. Even though he had a very accomplished career, he endured racism as a kid, awful heartbreak, and he got screwed over by Sharon Osbourne only to be asked back into the fold years later, and he was nearly killed in a random incident. Today, let's talk about the career of Jakey Lee. Before we get started, be sure to hit the bell notification icon and put all notifications on. I hear from a lot of my subscribers that they don't even get notifications when I post my videos. I would greatly appreciate if you guys did that. In addition to, of course, watching my videos and sharing my content. He was born Jakey Lou Williams in Norfolk, Virginia in 1957. His father is of Welsh ancestry and his mother is of Japanese ancestry. His family soon relocated a few years later to California. But growing up as a mixed-race child, he faced racism and bullying at school, but he described his childhood as reasonably happy. He started piano lessons at age 5 and even partook in statewide competitions, but found classical music wasn't really his calling. His father was a jazz enthusiast and exposed his son to such music, while his younger sister introduced him to pop and rock. It was at the age of 12 he heard Purple Haze by Jimi Hendrix playing in his sister's room one day, and that resulted in him wanting to explore rock music and switching from piano to guitar. Lee taught himself guitar, drawing on the music theory that he had picked up from years of piano lessons, and he started learning songs from bands like the Guess Who, and he sharpened his technique with guitar method books. By his teens, he was performing with local bands, including one covers outfit named Teaser, and he quickly earned a reputation as one of the most promising guitarists in San Diego. Admitting to louder sound, I was considered pretty much the best guitar player in San Diego. I knew it, and I sure had a lot of people telling me that. It wasn't long after he moved to Los Angeles, and for a brief moment, he started playing with a guy named Stephen Pearcy, who started the group Mickey Ratt, which later became Ratt. At this point, Pearcy was playing rhythm guitar, but he soon decided to give up the instrument, and Lee was the only guitar player in the band during this time. But another San Diego native named Robin Crosby moved down to LA, and Crosby soon befriended Lee and begged him to have him as the group's second guitarist, and it worked. But Lee and Crosby butted heads. Initially, Crosby was supposed to join as a rhythm guitar player, but as his time in the group went on, he wanted to also play some lead parts too. Lee's time in Mickey Ratt was pretty short. He vehemently disagreed with the band's focus on fashion. The members of Ratt even referred to their music as fashion rock, and they wanted to be in line with the glam look of the Sunset Strip, which was popular. Lee told Louder Sound, "I told him that was the lamest sounding motto I'd ever heard," to which he added, "F you, I'm out." Lee years later told Tone Talk that he was spending a lot of time after leaving Mickey Ratt with Motley Crue, and at one point he was asked by Nikki Sixx and Tommy Lee to replace Mick Mars, with Lee adding, "They actually wanted me to replace Mick," which you can understand that. I was better looking and better playing. There was apparently even talk of having two guitarists in Motley Crue. Now, I will add that Nikki Sixx years later responded on social media saying the story is completely made up. Lee ended up joining the group Rough Cut. Ronnie James Dio even wrote with the band, and his wife managed the group. The newly departed Black Sabbath frontman was setting up his own namesake group, and Lee wanted in. He played with Dio for only 6 weeks, though, telling Cobras and Fire, "I think that Ronnie was looking for more of a European sort of sound, because back then, and maybe to this day, I don't know, heavy metal, you had the American version and you had the European version. The American version relied on a lot of Van Halen. That was the kind of American metal sound." He would end up being replaced by Vivian Campbell. Following his firing, the guitarist spent 3 months in a booze-soaked existence, telling Louder Sound, "I'd wake up and not know where I was and what I'd done the night before." Then in 1982, he finally got an opportunity to audition for Ozzy Osbourne, following the tragic death of Randy Rhoads the same year. Lee sent in a demo tape and a photo of himself to Sharon Osbourne, Ozzy's wife and manager. But rumors were circulating around LA that George Lynch of Dokken had gotten the job already. Ozzy was on tour at the time, and he did have a show in LA, and that's when he set up Lee's audition. But from the get-go, it was apparent to Ozzy that he had found his new guitarist. Also at the rehearsal was George Lynch, who had no clue what was going on. Ozzy, according to Louder Sound, turned to Lynch and told him, "It's gone. You've lost it." He pointed to Lee. "He's the new guitar player." and with that, he basically walked away. Lee admitted that he felt a little bad about the whole thing, but he was also ecstatic at the opportunity. The fan reaction was mixed. While most people were very supportive of Lee joining the group, he did get the occasional hate, with some people saying that Randy Rhoads was a lot better than him. But funny enough, he wasn't intimidated by filling in for Randy Rhoads. One thing that did scare him was just the day-to-day life of being in Ozzy's band, as the frontman was struggling with substance abuse issues. He recalled the state of the band telling Ultimate Classic Rock, "Well, there was Tommy Aldridge on drums, Don Costa on bass, and Lindsey Bridgewater on keyboards, and Ozzy Osbourne on drugs and alcohol, basically. At that time, I was in the band. I can at least proudly say I'm pretty sure that was Ozzy Osbourne at the most up." All that craziness resulted in Lee actually quitting drinking for the time being. He also stated in multiple interviews that when he first joined Ozzy's group, he was paid about $100 a week. This amount was described as being incrementally increasing as he proved himself over time. So his weekly pay doubled over time to $200, then $400, and so on. From 1983 to 1987, Lee appeared on Ozzy's albums 1983's Bark at the Moon and their follow-up 1986's The Ultimate Sin, as well as both albums' supporting tours. Both albums were multi-platinum, but while Lee was paid quite well for his time in the group, he didn't see any of the money from the publishing side of things. He admitted to Eddie, "I Know Everybody" in that band Trunk, that when he joined the band and ahead of working on Bark at the Moon, he was supposed to receive songwriting credits and publishing royalties if he contributed to the songs. While recording the album at Ridge Farm in England, an actual farm with a studio in the barn, he was completely alone without any legal or managerial support. As the sessions were wrapping up, he kept asking about this promised contract he was supposed to get. Finally, after finishing all the guitar parts, they handed him a contract stating that Ozzy was the sole songwriter and that Jake had no part in writing or rights to the publishing, and he wasn't allowed to say otherwise publicly. Jake ended up confronting Sharon Osbourne, saying this wasn't what he had been told, to which she admitted, "No, it isn't." Feeling cornered, he realized that he either had to walk away, losing all credit for his work and facing an uphill legal battle, or stay silent and just accept the deal. Sharon responded pretty bluntly. If he didn't sign, they'd send him home, use another guitarist to record his parts, and he'd end up with nothing, adding, "Because if you don't, we'll give you a plane ticket, you go back home and you stand in line and you sue us. In the meantime, we have all your tracks, we'll get another guitar player. He'll redo your tracks and you'll have nothing." Lee explained that he didn't want to be remembered as just a guy who played on the record, got no credit, and then refused to tour because of his issues with Ozzy. Walking away at that point would have likely been a bad career move, so he went on the road despite the circumstances. Years later, as he discussed the financial side of things, he revealed that he was going to get $5,000 to record Bark at the Moon and then get a writing credit and publishing. But when he finally got the contract, they threw in another $10,000 to make up for not having writing and publishing. He described the move as lowballing him, adding, "My portion would have been $250,000 just for the title track, not having publishing on it," which means there was about $250,000 that Ozzy got instead of me. It's a lot of money, but I'm not bitter about it. Ultimate Classic Rock calculated that Lee's $15,000 payment for his work would be estimated to be about $40,000 in today's money, while the disputed publishing figure of $250,000 would be $635,000 today. Lee added that he wrote all of the music on Bark at the Moon, except for the ballad So Tired, a song that he actually hated. Believed your promises were true. While Ozzy didn't contribute to the instrumental side of things, Lee did praise him for coming up with melodies. It was in 1985, while Ozzy was in treatment for substance abuse at the Betty Ford Clinic, Jakey Lee was holed up in the studio coming up with music for Ozzy's follow-up record that turned into 1986's The Ultimate Sin. After completing rehab, Ozzy returned to find that Lee had written a substantial amount of new music. The Prince of Darkness was pleased not just with the quantity, but the quality of his work as well. So when it came time to do their follow-up, The Ultimate Sin, Lee refused to continue unless he had a written agreement guaranteeing credit and royalties. He drew a line. He admitted he wasn't trying to be difficult and he just simply didn't want to be taken advantage of again. Years later, Lee recalled, "I get ASCAP checks from the Ultimate Sin because my name's on there. I don't have any publishing, which, well, since I don't have any publishing, I don't know how much money that is, but I've been told that's where the real money is." It was following the Ultimate Sin tour in 1987 that Sharon called up Lee one day saying that she wanted to have dinner. Lee recalled going to dinner with Sharon. They spent a few hours talking and everything seemed to be going well. At least that's what he thought at first, until he remembered how Sharon was talking to him, saying things like, "Someday, Jake, when you have your own band." It was only when he returned home, a place that he shared with his guitar tech, that he started to hear the news. His guitar tech was at the Rainbow earlier in the day, and there was news going around LA that Lee had been fired. Sharon never brought it up during the dinner, but when Lee called her up, she confirmed the news. "What do you mean I'm fired?" And then she goes, "Yes, that's why I took you out to dinner." As for what Ozzy has said, he stated that he had no personal issues with the guitarist whatsoever, but claimed the dismissal was due to internal dynamics and that drummer Randy Castillo began to turn against Lee. Lee pointed the finger at bassist Phil Soussan, who was trying to convince Ozzy to let him be the band's primary songwriter, pushing the Prince of Darkness to reject Lee's material. Ozzy told the syndicated radio show Metal Shop in 1988 that he and Jake had grown distant and that they hardly spoke when they weren't either performing, recording, or writing together. Lee would end up being replaced by Zakk Wylde. Following his dismissal, Lee spent a year not working as he was dealing with personal problems at home, telling Louder Sound, "I had a wife who had problems. She was a drug addict. I spent a lot of time trying to help her get rehabilitated before we separated." But soon Lee's money was running out, and he started a new band with former Black Sabbath singer Ray Gillen called Badlands. It was really Lee's band, admitting to Louder Sound, "I was the leader. From the beginning I said, we'll vote on everything, and if the majority goes against what I want, I'll think about it." So it was not a democracy. The group also included bass player Greg Chason, who unsuccessfully auditioned for Ozzy a few years prior. But at that audition, he met Lee, and the two hit it off and discussed working together at some point in the future. Gillen also recruited his former Black Sabbath bandmate Eric Singer to be the band's drummer. With their connection to Ozzy and Black Sabbath, you'd think that Badlands' sound would have been pretty similar to those groups, but they weren't. The band's sound was more blues-based hard rock, and it was frequently compared to Led Zeppelin. They soon nabbed a deal with Atlantic Records, who issued the group's debut record in 1989. It ended up selling about 400,000 copies, an impressive start, but perhaps it would have done better had health problems not halted their tour. Ray Gillen was hospitalized with pneumonia, and little did his band members know that Gillen was dealing with something far more serious. During the making of the group's follow-up record, 1991's Voodoo Highway, the relationship between Gillen and Lee frayed. They were butting heads over the group's sound as Gillen wanted to write more commercial music, and he had already written 3 to 4 songs that Lee had taken a profound disinterest in, comparing them to a White Snake ballad and claiming another one sounded like The Cult. This resulted in Gillen complaining to Atlantic's A&R people that Lee was holding the band back from writing more commercial hits. But one thing that Lee didn't realize at the time was that Gillen had been diagnosed with AIDS, something that the frontman kept private from his bandmates and their label. Gillen knew he only had a short amount of time left, and he wanted to make as big of an impact as he could before he passed. It was while on tour for their second record, the band threatened to fire their manager Paul O'Neill after some money went missing. O'Neill knew about Gillen's health diagnosis, but when Lee confronted the manager about wanting to let him go, he revealed Gillen's diagnosis to the guitarist and threatened that if he was let go, he'd also inform their label Atlantic about Ray's health issue. He ended up talking to the label about it. Shortly afterwards, Gillen was fired from the group due to what Lee described to Kerrang as an, I quote, erratic behavior, and Atlantic soon dropped the band. Only adding to Lee's problems was that his ex-wife had overdosed and died around this time. When Lee tried to reconcile with Gillen a year later, he was made aware of the fact that the frontman was now in the hospital. Lee recalled, "He was like my brother, my musical brother, if nothing else. So I called up his mother in New Jersey and she told me he was in the hospital. It was bad. He couldn't talk, but his cousin was in the room, and through her I said everything I had to say, that I missed him and that I hoped we could work together again. She said it made Ray very happy that I said that, but he never got better." Gillen ended up passing away in December of '93. The next decade and a half saw the guitarist fade away from the limelight with a few releases here and there, with him recalling, after grunge happened, I just felt like I was unwanted, so I thought I'd just bow out as gracefully as I could. He did put out an instrumental solo record in 1996, in addition to contributing to a few covers and tribute albums for bands like Queen and Metallica. Lee did issue his first album in nearly a decade titled Retraced in 2005 that consisted of blues covers from the 60s and 70s. So what was he up to for 15 years? Over time, Lee said that he slipped into what he described as a laid-back kind of life. He didn't feel much urgency to work since he had a steady or modest form of income, which consisted of royalties mostly from The Ultimate Sin in addition to his time in Badlands. To make ends meet, he also sold off some of his guitars and gear, and he rented a one-bedroom place. But his disappearance from the spotlight also resulted in rumors about him being depressed, an addict, and homeless, all of which were untrue. But he did lose both his parents during this period. Around 2009, he revealed that he entertained discussions about rejoining Ozzy's band. Ozzy was having issues with Zakk Wylde, and Sharon Osbourne reached out to Lee, asking him if he'd be interested in rejoining the group. But Lee had one stipulation. He wanted to receive credit for what he wrote on Bark at the Moon, being clear that he didn't care about the money and he didn't want to receive any retroactive payments. He just wanted credit. He recalled how Sharon told him she'd call him back tomorrow, and well, she never did. So he took that as a no. It was in 2011 that his attitude towards music finally changed after it appeared in the video for We Come Undone by the band Beggars and Thieves. That kickstarted his foray back into music, as shortly after that he started his current outfit in 2013 called Red Dragon Cartel. Their self-titled debut album was released in 2014, and his second record titled Patina followed shortly after. In recent years, he revealed that he was misdiagnosed as having carpal tunnel syndrome and that he had no cartilage left in his right hand, and as a result, he had to receive cortisone shots as well as physiotherapy. Then in 2024, a strange story surfaced when it was revealed that Lee had been shot multiple times while he was out walking his dog in Las Vegas. The police noted that the incident was completely random. Lee explained that he had confronted a group of masked men attempting to steal his neighbor's motorcycle. After failing to deter them, they opened fire on the guitarist and fled the scene. Lee was placed in the intensive care unit, and despite being shot multiple times, none of his wounds were thankfully life-threatening. Because of him speaking out about Sharon screwing him over, he admitted years later, I was uninvited to the Black Sabbath show in Las Vegas because of that appearance on that metal show. It was a little bit hurtful, actually. I was actually looking forward to seeing Sabbath, but oh well. That brings us to the end of today's video, guys. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again in Rock and Roll True Stories. Take care.